Yakuza 4's game structure or narrative structure is separated into quarters. There are 4 characters in this game and they run in a series, so it doesn't bounce back and forth like modern standards usually do, where you do one chapter on one character, one chapter, or even have the choice of the sequence of the it's 4. Akiyama goes first, 4 chapters, then you play Saejima, which is Majima's brother, during his prison break and whatnot. And then you play Hanamura. Hanamura is a detective. He is a detective that works for the Tokyo PD. And then you play Kiryu. Kiryu is the last 4 chapters. And they run in chronological order, but it's implied that all 4 of them's events have some overlap. But they, instead of having all 4 of them play the same time period, the story moves forward, taking place at pivotal scenes stacked. So Akiyama has a series of events that go through, and there's some overlap of the other characters with what he's doing now, but usually it's a little after. And they all end on cliffhangers. And then there's a final chapter which introduces, they basically have a Avengers Assemble moment, basically. And all 4 of them ends up crossing paths. And they duke it out. And the final sequence is all 4 of them put together. Like the final boss fight, how do you top all the previous games? Have 4 characters fight 4 bosses, anteing it up every single time. And I actually think, because of how the order that I played Yakuza, Kiryu is the weakest part of this MSQ so far. Like, in the game so far, if you only play the MSQ, Kiryu is actually the weakest one, and it is super strong. Like, Kiryu has all the legacy and the baggage of Yakuza 0, Kiwami 1, 2, and 3, and he is still the weakest of story-wise of this game. In my opinion, I'm a little biased towards like freshness. Akiyama's chapters, more Akiyama, I need more of the other 3 characters. But what I do know is I know a little bit that one of the 4 characters are not returning. Hanamura is not returning for Yakuza 5, but Akiyama and Saejima is. And then they introduce another character. So these games are incredible. Like, it doesn't get old. It's basically variety. You don't get I would say oh, she's not doing very well actually, because she's probably stressed out, because we don't train anymore or ask her to relax or anything, so her stress is probably building up, which helps us actually. Oh, the characters are amazing, and I'm gonna probably feel this way every time as we play, that I want more. Like, I want more story. But they keep going bigger and bigger. I would say one thing I would characterize is RGG kind of entered, going from 1, 2 to 3, like the originals. They were entering a Ubisoft phase where more is better, so they just keep going more, keep going up and more, but just so happens it works out very, very well. But then they trimmed and refined. After Yakuza 5, there was this talk about like, there might be a little too much of everything. Like, there's just too much of things, but not enough refinement or like depth, right? So then they went back to they went back to the fundamentals. Took what they learned and created Yakuza 0, which was the prequel to their first game. Kind of like a back to the basics fundamental stuff, and see what they can produce in terms of quality, but lower in quantity. And I would say Yakuza 0 has a really long game time, but ultimately it does have fewer things operating. Has fewer characters, a more focus, and it works because, like I mentioned yesterday, it's up to modern standards. Modern standards favor, right now, like contemporary standards, favor more focused game. Like singular characters, maybe 2 at most, 1 or 2 antagonists, less intrigue, less complexity, something easier to follow, and then very refined and highly lots of depth in very specific systems. So Yakuza 0 had 2 mainline mini games, and they were way bigger than any of the mini games in previous games. And then it had 2 characters, 2 basic villains, and a slight third party. And it was incredibly emotional, lots of set pieces. So there's like a lot of time without dialogue, just lots of set pieces with fancy action happening. So it is easily regarded as the best so far, the most balanced, streamlined, refined version that RGG Studio has put out. But to me, unfortunately, I don't really go along with modern standards right now. I'm more of an old standard now. So when games were still messy and experimental and stuff. So generally, I'm an indie gamer. This is the most mainstream thing that I've done in a while, and this is not mainstream. Yakuza 3, 4, and 5 are not mainstream. Yakuza 0 is barely mainstream. But the more recent games that we're approaching soon are mainstream. They apply a lot of the stuff that makes them very popular, and so that's great because it means RGG is doing well financially, and they have a much bigger fan base and whatnot. But now I'm more like the hardcore, I guess. So I'm more of a gatekeeper now. Like I have characteristic gatekeeper behavior where I would say I want this stuff. I want the old school stuff where it's just so much volume, because that's how it feels to be in this lifestyle. The lifestyle is hodgepodge. It's like all over the place. It's messy. And that's kind of how I felt. But I still like modern standards. So I'm looking forward to playing I call it the post Dragon Engine days, which is post Kiwami 2. That's well, actually post Yakuza 6. Yakuza 6 is the first time they truly entered the modern standard, which they also updated their in-game engine, which is remarkable. Kiwami 2, like the first time I booted up Kiwami 2 and looked around Kamurocho and Sotenbori, which are 2 cities that are featured really, really well in Yakuza 0 on this engine right here. It looks really amazing. They milked it as much as they can. And when I hit Kiwami 2, I spent like the first 2 hours just looking at the city because it was unbelievable. It was so amazing looking. Am I not getting outfits? Sorry, I thought I could just do this loop cycle and have a conversation down memory lane while I do this. Typically, like grind loops like this, I enter, but I wasn't paying attention if I was getting new outfits, now that I think about it. Maybe I'm already stuck. Maybe she can't be number 2? Oh, her rank gone down. Did it have something to do? Okay. Okay, so her rank can go down, which is good. Because, I need this to keep going, I think. Here's a deep cut about my attachment after 3 games, right? After Yakuza 0, Kiwami 1 and 2. Sega, the RGG Studios, is one of the mainline developers for Sega, the in-house developer, right? And just 3 months ago, when I was still starting my journey, I was on Kiwami 2 already. They dropped a trailer for Yakuza 8, or it's called Like a Dragon now. So we're moving over to the Japanese, the official title of the game. Yakuza was the Western localization when there were 2 versions of the game. So now Like a Dragon 8 was announced, and the trailer was like a minute or 2, and it was a CG trailer. All it showed was the canonical like walkway with the gateway thing in Kamurocho, and you just see the previous protagonist Ichiban, which is Like a Dragon 7, walk out, and then you hear all these voice clips, and the only voice clip I recognized outside of Haruka was Kiryu's voice, and you just see his silhouette as Ichiban's like walking towards you, you know, like the goat, like Sigma style, right? Kiryu just walks right out and joins Ichiban, walking down towards you with blinding lights of Kamurocho and the gateway, and I got goosebumps. Like, I was like, yes. Because Like a Dragon 7, which is after Yakuza 6, or Like a Dragon 6, Like a Dragon 7 does not star Kiryu. It is the first in the mainline game that does not feature Kiryu. So a lot of times this lined up with the changing of leadership. So the person who made was involved, the director that was involved in all these games, he's moving on to a different studio, and he's moving on to a different project. I don't know if it's still with Sega Publishing Group, but with that came a baton pass, and Ichiban became the protagonist. And most, during that time, like 2 or 3 years ago now, when that game was released, it was understood that maybe the Kiryu saga ended with Like a Dragon 6. And he just walks out, and that's like, yes, Kiryu saga is not over. He is joining the protagonist, and they're resuming the classic dual protagonist. And it feels, honestly, it feels like the MCU thing too, where like you have an origin story, right, of a new character, and then they bring back legacy. So you have you have Iron Man, basically. Iron Man picks up, you hear about his story, and then the next movie, like the next game, bring back Captain America. And now Captain America and Iron Man are together. That kind of thing. And I only played 3 games so far, and when Kiryu walked out and he looked incredibly different, I was already hooked. And I don't know anything about Ichiban, because he only has 1 game, and that's Like a Dragon 7, and I'm not there yet. So I'm looking forward to that. And not only that, that was announced for somewhere in 2024. They were like, well, we're gonna release another game, and it's a supplemental series, is what I'm gonna call it, and it's called Like a Dragon Gaiden, and they were like, you know, Kiryu just doesn't just randomly show up. We got to figure out how we're gonna explain what he was doing between the events of Like a Dragon 7 and Like a Dragon 6. Well, we're gonna release a game called Like a Dragon Gaiden and explain what Kiryu was doing between that moment. So they keep adding on, like they do their RGG is doing the thing where you do a prequel to a sequel, a pre-sequel, in between sequels. So to get you that idea, like, nah, we're gonna throw it back. And that makes me excited because it leaves opportunity on the table. It means like yesterday when I was finishing Yakuza 3, it means there's an opportunity for Kiwami 3, Kiwami 4, or a in-between game. Like, here's the events of the 3 years that eclipsed between Yakuza 3 and Kiwami 2. Like, we're filling it in or something. So they go back and forth, and there are enough characters, enough craziness to have just all that. And that's kind of what universe building is, metaverse building. No jokes about like Meta and Facebook and whatnot, but metaverse building is a modern standard. So when you build a micro universe within your IPs, so you build an IP universe, right? And it's popularized, without going into much, Disney is the top financial holder of one of the most lucrative media universes, but RGG has created a substantial one too. That's predicated on content, like on story and character building. It's not predicated on mechanics, which I like because I'm a sentimental person. I'm not sentimental to mechanics. Mechanics restrict and limit a person's ability to take in new ideas. So I'm not the guy that's like, oh, I can't wait to find out how the next game plays. It's still important to me, but it's secondary to what is the story that they're going to tell me. Am I going to make new memories? And those memories aren't just my personal memories, as in, oh, this game played so good, this was my favorite game because it played so smoothly. My memories are the stories that the people create that I can't possibly create on my own. I can definitely create how I feel, how I react, how I problem solve. That's just me. It's not as exciting to me as that excites others. I'm not a very inward looking person anymore, so. Oh, okay, we got more dress. Okay, here we go. We farmed out some dress. So let's buy this. Ooh, this is a nice dress. Let's just buy the white one. Actually, nah, the black one's good. Alright, so we got some extra dress that we can start collecting. Off-shoulder dress, huh? I like the asymmetry, it's kind of nice. Anyways, that's a little bit of a filler while we are doing this. This is more like B-roll territory right now, where we have to do our grind loops, right? Our grind loops for the completion. So I have a lot of stories and reflections. It's a classical thing that I do quite a bit to fill in the time. You'll probably find that to happen most of the time when I play, because completionists gotta fill in the time, make the memory meaningful and connect everything, I suppose. Yeah, man, the characters in this game though. Oh yeah, no worries, no worries. GTA 5 heist, huh? Rockstar Games is a great example. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet. Like, I might, because I've done this, and Rockstar Games is going through their what I call the cyclic remake happenstance, like legacy recycling. They've already started, right? They already started on the OG GTAs and stuff. I might go down that series too. Like what I mean is do the thing, because GTA is what Rockstar Games is the, with as much respect as I can of not comparing apples and oranges, the closest descriptor of Western society, like US specifically, but a counter culture studio that focuses on this type of gameplay right here, like this type. The last standing one for Western culture is Rockstar Games. The Rockstar Games that I have played, the closest one to the current date is LA Noire. It was a standalone, so I didn't have to enter the legacy of GTA, right? But I might consider it. It will be tough to do completionist stuff for that too. But yeah, it would be, with as much respect, it is the RGG of the West. Like if you wanted a Western style setting, right? So like RDR as well. So RDR, right, is Rockstar's East of RGG's Like a Dragon. So Like a Dragon has an old school feudal spin-off. It's called Ishen. And Rockstar Games also has a Western style, like literally Western. So they also went back, and it would be considerably spiritually a spin-off. It's the Rockstar style, development style, with the context of old times. And then Rockstar had a few spin-offs that were 1 takes and maybe 2 takes that didn't quite spawn something as much. And RGG also has one. It's called the Judgment series, and it has 2 games, and there's no necessary plan for a 3rd one either. So these 2 companies represent, in my opinion, they represent a non-competitive development cycle. They are the 2 companies that dramatically took different settings on a genre that most people don't really want to touch, and because it requires a specific amount of backing, like, you know, investments and confidence and legacy in order to do this genre. It's a really high fail genre. Like what I mean is the minimum standards that they must meet in order to produce a product, and in the risk they have to take against the modern standard. I know that from the popularity of GTA 5, they would be like, oh, just release GTA 6 already because, you know, so and so, everyone wants that. But as much as the gatekeepers, like as in people who are really passionate, we have to understand that the modern standard, right? If I was an investor in Rockstar Games, I would keep on recycling with low loss of investment on existing products, because it is a gigantic financial risk to release these games, these types of games, in the current standard of trends right now. They have a really high chance to fail. And there are companies that are still rapidly investing a lot into these types of games, and they do not give back enough financial costs to develop these games, like these types of games, because psychologically it's not a very compelling format. Who suffers the most that are like Rockstar and RGG, the 2 devs that are buying their time and slowly using their legacy instead of constantly reintroducing a bigger, and it's Ubisoft. And what happened to Ubisoft? Ubisoft is like batting against, like cramming over and over again, trying to figure out how to make their games more psychologically appealing. to the current social norm. So they're trying to reinvent their universe in order to create it. Is Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed is the closest thing to these two, but they're trying to do it by offsetting quality and going for volume. So they're trying to reduce the cost of making those games to break even, right? To like at least make a profit that's sustainable. Meanwhile, Rockstar Games and RGG are doing their classical lifestyle, and they're releasing it every once in a while in hopes that the idle period, right? The idle period and the self period doesn't saturate that niche market. Because, and while Ubisoft is doing the other thing, they're doing the brute force method where you just jam as many iterations as possible, and you do get diminished returns, but it's a consistent one. What Rockstar, in my opinion, what Rockstar and RGG is aiming for is they want to hit home runs. They don't want to go quantity over quality in order to meet demands. There are companies that are really successful in that, and Ubisoft is leaning towards that. Koei Tecmo with like Dynasty Warriors, the Musou games, that's a great example. You just keep printing them out. You know, EA Sports is a great example. You keep printing them out and they get consistent returns, but they don't hit home runs, but they're the consistency game. So they're more like the grinder type, which as a lifestyle person, I resonate more with the grind style of lifestyle, like just persistently keep making more stuff, slightly iterative over and over again. But I think Rockstar and RGG is less about iterative and more about home runs. So they're buying their time. It's kind of like asking people like, oh, where's my Elder Scroll 7? I forgot what number they are. You have to understand, like, one has to understand as a gamer, as a psychologist, or as a consumer, that stuff isn't very popular. So the answer to your question is, why didn't they release it? It's not necessarily because they can't, or it's more the consideration of the timing of the release of their products. Although I do have to say, the case is getting really great for a game like Elder Scroll, because Western RPGs are hot, really hot right now, but the format of the game is not really that popular, like not as popular as one. Wait, do I own one of these? Yeah, I do. So Strapless. Okay. So timing. And I look forward to Rockstar's next game. I love watching people play these types of games because it's a roller coaster of emotions. And as much as I like to see people always in Cloud 9 and having the time of their life with video games, having downs and ups in a video game makes it really memorable. Having consistent feelings tend to be less memorable. Like, oh, I want it to keep getting better. Well, things can get worse before they get better. Like, in fact, a lot of the memorable things tend to be, you know, when you're frustrated. But then it becomes nostalgia, and nostalgia is really powerful. So my love for Yakuza RGG games like this, like doing something like this, doesn't come from always being happy or always feeling enjoyment. It comes from everything. Like my appreciation for Kiwami 2, the Dragon Engine, comes from playing Yakuza 3, 4, and now 4. Like the appreciation for something comes from experiencing it when it didn't exist. So games like this really highlight things that you take for granted, things you might not take for granted, and you know, it's a great mixed bag in my opinion. But anyways, That's another topic when you mentioned GTA. That's... I have a lot to say about a lot of things, because typically whenever I do something, I try to be as active and intentionally engaged in the thing. I'm usually thinking about a lot of, even more things when I'm doing loop cycles like this for completion. Wait, she's too stressed to be in. Okay. I don't know how much farm I have. I don't know how many more loops. We have to do like 30 plus loops of this to get all the outfits. So it's always story time. But to highlight other studios that are still doing this type of game, which is extremely risky right now, lucratively risky, so pro business stuff, outside of Ubisoft, Rockstar, and Sega. I think Rockstar self-publishes, so it's Rockstar Games and both publisher and stuff, but RGG is Sega, and Ubisoft is Ubisoft. It's Ubisoft's primary studio. Who else do games like these that has some selective success? Hold up. I need to find a dress that I don't own. Two-piece dress. Yes, we don't own a two-piece dress. This one kind of looks nice. Ooh, I like this one. Huh. I would say it's a... Ubisoft actually has two series. One is even worse off right now. I'm pretty sure it's Ubisoft, right? The hacker thing. What are they called? Watcher? No. What was that series called? That involves hacking. They just released a game subtitled Legion. Oh, why am I drawing a blank now? I want to say like it's Watch something. Why can't I think of it? But you probably know what I mean. Watch Legion, something like that. It's about hacking. Hey, Worm. So Ubisoft has a couple of them. Their entire franchise, actually, most of their main IPs deal with these type of games, and it's really risky. I mean, Konami technically still has MGS, right? But, well, it's Kojima-less, but, you know, Kojima-less. Watch Dogs, thank you. Watch Dogs, that's it. So Ubisoft's like portfolio is struggling. They're struggling financially when in comparison to other games, because their IPs are largely these types of games, and it's rough. It is really rough going. Heck, even CDPR didn't hit so hot, right? And CDPR is one of the bigger self-published studios, and the last one was Cyberpunk 2077. It is a really risky business to make games like these, and there's a lot that can go not favorably emotionally for the buyers. So typically you want to be really focused. If I had to name some characteristics that drive the current standard, it may change in the future, absolutely, but for now is character-driven narration, choice matters, protagonist projection, so usually a blank slate silent hero is sufficient, lots of customization, core gameplay only. Probably want to avoid any deviation from core, so very hyper-focused refinement games. And I would say it's a detraction if the game is too long. I know how that sounds, but actually I would say there's a very wonderful window of 20 to 30 hours. No less than 10 at the lower end, no greater than 40 at the top end. And it has to be a really super tight, centered around one core mechanic. And all the auxiliary stuff has to be centered around that core mechanic. So if you had two core mechanics, right, or a separation of character or narration, or any bifolding of the narration, as in there's a split in continuity or any type of jumping and stuff, that's really not favorable. And also world building is on the down low. Like, if you get sidetracked by sub stories, which is inevitably these games are effective. They are going to be evaluated based on the focus. So if you have a bunch of auxiliary characters, too many of them, they will be a detraction from the main events. So main event games is the type of philosophy that really rolls well in this game. What's a great example of main event philosophy games that are super refined, hyper focused, that are running the gold standards? Naughty Dog. Last of Us, right? Naughty Dog's Last of Us. Even Guerrilla Games is for Horizon series, hyper focused. Singular character driven novels with supporting characters. FromSoft, you know, silent protagonist, a projection of self, everything revolves around you, right? Now there are niche games that may seem popular, but it pales compared to the statistical drivers. Yesterday I was talking about Yakuza 3's narration, right? Like RGG's narration. Like, there hasn't been too many mainstream games that have witnessed this web storytelling device. But there are a niche game series that are coming up that are getting there, that has a cult following, like a very modern following. And a great example of that is Octopath Traveler. So JRPG games that introduce, which happens to be also Japanese storytelling, so that type of thing. And those games are on the rise in a sense that they're on a rise in a smaller collection. So they represent like 4, maybe less than 5% of the gaming industry, right? And they're kind of on the rise, and I like those games, and I do actually play those games. Like, but I would still consider them the most mainstream indie games there are. Like, they are the indies of the major publishers. Octopath Traveler is Square Enix's IP, and it is the smallest IP of the thing. What is the mainliners? The mainliners are the single character driven story games. Final Fantasy Remake, right? So while JRPGs at a point back in the day, they're called more like character collectors, where you had like multiple characters and all the stories somehow intertwine with each other. It still represents a really small market, like a super small market. And I do like the character driven stuff. Actually, I prefer to watch them, like watch other people play them, because you get people who relate to the character a lot or not relate, and then it's a very, I almost want to say it's a very black and white situation with those. Meanwhile, for me, the types of games that give me the most value, oh, balloon dress, huh? Are the games that make me feel everything. Like, I want to be upset. I don't want to like a part of the game. Like, not getting me to dislike a part of the game makes the game better for me. Like, I'm not here to constantly feel... I don't want a developer forced lucratively, which that's what happens right now. It's developers are forced lucratively to get business. They have to understand their client, and then they make a game for their clients. That some people would call that selling out, right? But to me, that is great business practice, and it is what the modern audience is like now. They are given what they want. They are algorithmically familiar with constantly being met with expectations. Like, their expectations must be met. For me, I buy a game hoping that I can meet the expectations of the developers. As in, I want a developer to be interested in seeing if they were able to get the point across to me as a player. It is their point to make, not me making a point about the game. So, like, I want them to know if they thought we should put in Mahjong in this game and all of the games, and I hope all the players know how crappy they are at Mahjong and get frustrated with Mahjong. And if that was their intent, 10 out of 10. Like, I don't want them to be saying, oh, we should include Mahjong because the gamers might like Mahjong. It's part of the... No, it's not about my feelings. I want to know their feelings. I want to analyze the product, right? Because there are people who created the product, and I want to nail what they are doing, or what they want to do. And it's not as interesting for mainstream games, personally, because in order to understand the developer's perspective, you just have to understand what you want in a game. And that's kind of boring, because I obviously know what I want in the game. But the more interesting thing is when a developer can tell me what I didn't know I want, or what I didn't know I didn't need, etc. So it's like going to the movies. That's what makes movies exciting. Reading a book, living life. What's exciting is there are things you don't even know you're going to look forward to. There are things you don't even know you're going to hate. I think as an old guy now, like, I'm a lot older than most people that play video games, right? The vast majority. I'm an aging person, and I'm no longer interested in my own self-interest. Like, I don't want to buy a game because I expect to like it. I want to buy a game not knowing what the heck I'm going to experience. And that makes me nervous, makes me scared, all that stuff. But when it comes to, like, mainstream games, they are mainstream because they understand the statistical average of the time. That's what makes them mainstream. Something is popular because it represents the vast majority's psychological requirements at the time. And games like these are not. Why is this not on the top of Twitch? Because it's not mainstream, right? And I don't think when I say mainstream, I'm saying it as a positive thing, or I mean, it's up to your interpretation. But for me, the things I love, maybe I have guilty pleasures, those things are not mainstream yet. But if they become mainstream, you bet your balls I'll be a mainstream person, right? But right now, I just happen to don't have personal preferences that are mainstream. And the irony here is, the paradox here is, the thing I like most makes it inherently not mainstream. Like, variety doesn't provide consistency. You need consistency to be mainstream. So it has to be a consistent game design. The only situation psychologically that the thing I like could become mainstream is that everyone likes inconsistency. Is that even possible? It is. I can think of a few situations. But is it a business practice that someone who spends their life making money off video games and building games and stuff would do? Heck no. Like, who would ever say, I want a job that is going to be inconsistent in results. So inherently, I will probably, if I had to gamble, I would probably live the rest of my life being a hipster over time, because I like inconsistency. I want, and this is a selfish request, obviously, I want other people to creatively risk inconsistency for my own selfish entertainment. Like, I want, it sounds as bad as it sounds. Like, my favorite things are enjoying inconsistent things in creative arts, right? But to do that, the people who make those products have to risk their careers every time they make something. So they have to take the creative risk of doing something different every single time and hope their job survives. I don't think I can blame anybody like FromSoft or anyone to just iteratively design something that people like over and over again, because their job is at stake. There's only going to be a rare period, and it's very temporary. There are a few periods in developmental industry, and it's the beginning period. It's the startup period. When you are in the founder's effect, as in unprecedented territory, that's the territory when unpredictability and inconsistency is mainstream. So the beginning of things. So when the internet was new, everything was inconsistent, and that was accepted and normalized as social norms. So it was okay websites are all jank and not like each other. But when time matures, iteration takes over, because iteration creates consistency, and humans are very consistent people, right? And then when a new thing comes up, it'll usher in another period of, I'm gonna say, when it comes to the internet, like 1 or 2 years of inconsistency. And that's when I myself as a person intellectually becomes mainstream temporarily. But then refinement happens and it becomes consistent again. Then I move on to the next thing. So it would be great if it was normalized in that way, where business and the creative arts can find a compromise in a model that can sustain creative liberties. But generally speaking, business models are at odds with creative liberties. And hello, Crazy and gang. Sorry, I was going over like this while I'm grinding this hostess loop here, where we're talking about the gaming industry and how certain types of philosophy is not very lucrative. But I really hope that somehow companies like the developers of this game and like Rockstar Games have a place where they don't feel like the business side of thing is squeezing their creative liberties. So as much as people say, like, I'm a creative person, right? You know, and I like creative things. You have to consider yourself. What does that mean? All right? For me, I want games to make me feel uncomfortable. As in, if you ever feel that thing like, here's a way to test if you're someone who's at the other spectrum. It's not a good or bad thing, because personally, being a consistent person means if you're happy already, you can be consistently happy, right? But for me, I prefer to get angry sometimes. Like, I don't feel much a lot of times now. So when I play video games, I want video games to make me angry, make me cry, make me frustrated and stuff. But that's not how games are designed to make money anymore. Like, if you're asking a developer like, hey, can you give me an experience that I could never imagine ever to have, but still guarantee that it's happy, like it's a happy experience, and somehow meets all my expectations? To a game developer, actually to the person who owns the business, the answer is no. Like, Like, you have to ask, would they take that risk? That's not gonna fly. So I don't want to go out and say that they don't have to balance business in pursuit of creativity, right? So how do the gaming industry reconcile this? You do something like Kojima does. You do something like, I'm so sorry to RGG, but I forgot the director's name of the Yakuza series. But what they do is they leave their parental developer behind, let that developer continue to iterate and refine their product at the cost of creative freedom. And those individuals go on to go back into the indie scene where there's less financial risks, smaller projects, so they can experiment creative liberties. So, and the cycle continues. So whenever you see like someone, like, here's a hot take, a super hot take, and it can happen, Miyazaki leaving FromSoft at some point to make a secondary studio in which he experiments with a different type of game. It doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't continue to work with FromSoft, but generally speaking, when time comes and the business takes hold of creative liberties, it's a balancing act. Business means you have to be consistent. You have to meet expectations. It also stunts creativity. The more consistent, lucrative stuff is taking less and less risk financially and creatively. But in order to get the freedom of creative liberties, you have to jump ship to not have the financial part cover that. And a great example in technology is Apple, right? Apple, Nintendo, when it comes to hardware. I mean, Nintendo as a whole, their entire IP catalog, it's iterative design. Iterative design creates consistent payback. Even if it's less well received over time, it is consistent. So you always get the guarantee of the baseline return. So it's rarely ever a failure, right? Like, for example, if you're a great runner, you don't just magically become a sprinter and assume that you get the same benefits as a sprinter than a runner. If you spent like 10 years running, you don't just magically assume sprinting is like the GOAT, because it's non-transferable. Like, there are some transference. It's enough transference that you're willing to sprint, but sprinting is a risk compared to running more. Like, you know, like just regular running, not like non-sprinting running. So it's kind of like that. And it's kind of ironic, but I make myself sound like I'm not a demanding person, but I demand the one thing that most people would not engage as a career. And my 10 out of 10s are the ones where they tend to be the games that are like the artsy-fartsy games. What I mean by artsy-fartsy is the games that no one else is doing, and somehow it randomly was successful in that small window. It's not lucratively going to knock the socks off of people's charts or anything, but somehow they made it successful in a time when really no one cares about it. And for me, Yakuza 0 is a great example of it. No one asked for Yakuza 0. RGG just made it. It's just a vision they had, and they took the risk, and they're continuing to take the risk. But as I said about completing Yakuza 3 yesterday when I'm reminiscing, yeah, it's hipstery. So artsy-fartsy means like I'm that guy that liked Shape of Water. And like the most mainstream thing I can think of that became mainstream after the fact, I'm the guy that likes the before the fact kind of thing. So for example, if you ever watch the Academy Awards, right? A artsy-fartsy movie from nowhere takes picture of the year and it suddenly becomes mainstream temporarily overnight, right? That's me. I'm the guy who liked it and was surprised it won something. That's the stuff. And the only thing I can say about it, I don't follow through with the gatekeeping. Usually, I'm happy that something becomes mainstream temporarily, even though I liked it beforehand. However, I'm also someone who's antagonistic to gatekeeping, where if you like something beforehand and it becomes popular, gatekeepers tend to be like, oh, now like there's gonna be filthy casuals liking our thing, even though we already knew it was cool to begin with, that kind of thing. That's when I stopped too. I kind of stopped there. I'm like, I just want more people to get a chance to like it, even for like a brief moment. And for me, Yakuza 0 would be a great example in this great game series. Yakuza 0, I want people to enjoy at least one of RGG's games, and it would probably be Yakuza 0. A gatekeeper would be like, nah, that's weak sauce. You have to do all of it, you know, that kind of thing. And not so much about that. We still didn't get the rest of the dress yet. Or basically, in case anyone curious what I'm doing, I'm farming dresses. Basically, I have to fail and then keep doing sessions to get the dresses. So I'm kind of ranting to fill in the time, the B-roll, while I'm grinding. But yeah, and in my life, I prefer the grind. Like, I prefer habit forming, healthy habit forming, consistency. Because your life is much longer than a product, right? So I like to be entertained by inconsistency because my life is completely consistent most of the time. And when I approach things, like for example, I'm not saying what I want is what I would do. Like, you know, kind of like practice what you preach kind of thing. If I was a game developer, I would be the person who's iterating the design at FromSoft. Like, I would be that guy who makes a slightly different Call of Duty game every single 2 years. Because I am a consistent person. I do not gamble on that I can knock it out of the park every single time by doing something remarkably different every day. I am a realist in the sense that if I didn't practice something and I keep doing something new, I won't necessarily get refined or better at specialize in anything. And the trade-off for that is it will provide with very, very inconsistent business. It doesn't guarantee investors that you know what you're doing, because you're always constantly doing something different. Now, with that said, there are indie companies that do that, and they've successfully done it to a point until they become mainstream. And there's one such developer, indie developer, that I absolutely adore that just broke that mold, and they are entering into the mainstream. And what was the first thing they did? They announced an iterative sequel for the first time in their history. And it behaves psychologically as what I was discussing about the risk of iterative design versus creative design. That developer and self-published group is Supergiant Games. When I saw that they were announcing a new IP, it ended up being the sequel to Hades. So for the first time ever, in their like 10+ year tenure as an indie group, established that they always make new IPs. Like, just drop if they hit a popular game, which almost all of their games were, actually 3 of the 4 were extremely well received, but in a small niche group like the artsy fartsy games, right? They were all critically successful, but one was lucratively powerhouse, and it was Hades, their latest one. and it entered the mainstream, like for an indie company. So the first thing they do is they announce a sequel. And what is the sequel? It's an iterative design on Hades 2, or on Hades system. So yeah, I will still play Hades 2, right? Like, absolutely. But now I have very realistic expectations as to what that game is going to play like, what its target audience is, and how far out of the box they're going to go. They're not. Supergiant Games, if you ever play their games, Bastion, Transistor, Fire, and then Hades, you'll come to realize that the 4 games are very different from each other because they were still an indie group. They looked at their vision more than who they're catering to. But because of the lucrative success of Hades, it's a great time to get some money, to make money, to have assurances. Because a group like that, they have to reinvest all of their stuff, right, back into the next game and gamble that their new game isn't going to be too dramatically different that it just falls apart. It's not to say that there aren't risks for sequels. There are risks for sequels not meeting expectations. Another indie group that I largely play indie games, so I follow mostly indie games. An indie group that fell apart because they changed too much on a sequel? Red Hook Games. Darkest Dungeon 2 just came out. Like, full release came out, not early access. They exited EA, early access, and they changed too much. And they got the slam hammer on reception because they wanted to still behave like an indie group, but they made a sequel. And the sequel departed away from the first game. So you psychologically, in my opinion, as a developer, failed to understand what it means to have a sequel and what it means to just have a different game. In fact, I would probably even argue psychologically, if they labeled their game as something else that didn't carry the Darkest Dungeon title, but in the Darkest Dungeon universe, like just call it, I don't know, like even a subtitle or something, it would probably do better psychologically, and it would stop drawing comparisons to itself. What's another great example that it didn't go far enough? Callisto Protocol. Callisto Protocol is a great example. Wolong is another great example where it's iterative design and they attempted to, it still was received better than if it was called Neo 3, but with a different setting, right? Because you're psychologically setting up your audience to meet expectations when you iterate for a mainstream thing. But it's tough because when you become mainstream, you become known for that mainstream thing. Now the question is, do you have a crew that prefers to stick with that mainstream thing? If not, it's a gigantic financial risk to introduce a new IP. And that IP is a departure from the mainstream the creators are known for. And FromSoft, a lot of people might be thinking they're taking big risk this year with Armored Core, but you have to remember that actually Armored Core is older than the Souls IP, but it's been a really long time. So the first thing you think of is, oh my gosh, it's really exciting, but it's exciting in a sense that it is also FromSoft's first risk they're taking in over a decade of game design. Why am I not getting more dress? It's like it's every 3. Every 3 sessions, I'm supposed to be getting more dresses. I'm excited. I'm excited for it to... I'm just excited to see FromSoft take a risk. It's not every day that you get a publishing group that's willing to be like, hey, we haven't released a game like this in forever, or people don't ask for this. Would you be willing to pay for this game's development? It's definitely from a business standpoint. Like if I was a prospective investor, right? I want to invest in a AAA game. My first inclination is someone would pitch me the title. They'd be like, oh yeah, this and this. And the first question a business person would ask is, what evidence do you have that will convince me that this project will be successful? And usually evidence is based on something that is already happening, unless you can generate enough converging evidence. So what does that mean in a creative process? It means they have to convince me enough as a businessman to invest in enough characteristics that already exists put together in a product that guarantees its return on investment. A businessman would be very unlikely and unconvinced by someone who says, hey, I'm going to make a game like no other game that exists right now. Would you care to place $1 million on me? The answer is no. Like most of the time, you have to have a really rich businessman that have like just $1 million is nothing to them. That might be a convincing argument. Like, you know what? Sure, we'll take the risk. Like a trillionaire or something, or like a multi-billionaire. But in the gaming industry, that's not gonna fly. So what do? You self-publish. You go to crowdfunding and you hope you get enough money. And you know what happens with crowdfunding? It fails a lot of times. But it's not because the product failed. It's because the people who invested felt betrayed that they were buying a product, and they, buying the product, had an unnecessary amount of expectations and loyalty to the product. Crowdfunding, the reason why crowdfunding works is because it comes from the source of non-business practice people most of the time. Those people are not businessmen most of the time. They are people who give money on faith. And what do you get when you get faith money? You get emotional responses, incredible emotional damage, potential emotional damage. So a lot of times there's all this naysaying about crowdfunded games, like all of them fail and stuff. It's like, who determines if they fail? The crowdfunding source determines if they fail. So is it really a reflection? Is it more a reflection of the failure of quality of a developer's vision, or the source of the people, the source of the evaluation? So that's a really super deep cut that I probably won't go into because it'll probably take like 3 hours plus, but maybe a subject for another time. The balance, the driver between voluntary funding on faith and business pragmatism, like funding based on pragmatism, right? Call of Duty could still rack in all the mediocre scores, but it has consistency and business practices backing it, so it will be a consistent performer. It's not predicated on faith and people's loyalty or something. It's predicated on science, really, which is conditional behavior and constant feedback. What is another great model that illustrates that, and it doesn't operate on emotional or sentimentalism? Live service games. You could hate a live service game so much, but when you normalize your behavior, you're still gonna love to hate to play it. There's something elegant about that. So as much sentimentalism comes from risky stuff. So if you're artsy fartsy like me, you're probably going to be very emotional. And for me, unfortunately, even that isn't enough for emotional things nowadays. So I seek emotional things, like when oh dang, she angered a customer. Oh dang, I didn't even think that was possible. She must be really stressed out. Sorry, I'm deliberately like hurting my hostess because I want to get all the dress. Kyoko's having a bad time because her stress level is off the charts. Yeah, she just left. Wait, does that count? I wonder if that counts as a completed session. Anyways, lots more about that, but that's a good hot take. The balance between meeting people's emotional investment, or just, oh, she's not here anymore. Oh no, did I lose? I can't. I hope I don't think I can lose a hostess in this game. Right? Okay, yeah, I can't. We're fine. We're gonna continue our loop. This part takes a long time, so it's just me walking in a circle and then going into the thing 3 times, and I had to do it 3 times to complete 1 session, and I need to do 3 sessions to unlock 1 outfit. So, and there are 23 outfits, so that's at least 90 times of this loop cycle. And it's also assuming I don't accidentally loop twice while I'm like digressing about the gaming industry. I'm only talking about gaming right now because I'm playing a video game, but this is a human condition thing. It's understanding psychology quite a lot, like the intersection between pragmatism and the human condition. Lots of human conditions, habit formation, evaluation of your investments, right? Value, the perception of value, and conscious and not subconscious conditioning, probably. I mean, it's still a habit, technically. It's related to habit formation. But like what I'm doing now, whoops, I accidentally cycled twice. What I'm doing now, the way I enjoy these games and stuff, is a particular habit that I formed intentionally. So there's also the balance of self-awareness and then intentful habit formation versus subconscious habit formation or non-conscious habit formation. And live service games is a great example of that. What makes you want to log into Honkai Star Rail even knowing that it's a live service game, right? Why is live service game one of the highest turnovers in how can something be both popular, lucrative? How can something be really popular, lucrative, and successful while appearing unsuccessful or being unpopular, negative, and criticized often? It's cognitive dissonance. It's the difference between a model. It's one of the biggest drivers is the unconscious nature of habit formation versus how much self-awareness someone has, and then applying those things together. So the reality is live service functions as a form of habit formation, and that habit formation is forming without the awareness of the critics. So like the individuals who are like have already formed the habits, irregardless of what you see, like, oh yeah, this is bad and all that, but habits don't really obey that. You don't break a habit by knowing it's bad. You have to break the habit by consciously breaking it or substituting it. It takes a barrier. So one can participate in a habit not knowing they were conditioned to have a habit if they lack the self-awareness to integrate any new knowledge into substituting that habit. So that sounded really, really verbose and esoteric. But I want to simplify that a little bit because I haven't really organized my thoughts with this. What I'm saying is a game, maybe even something you enjoy, a model or something, can create a habit and you may not be aware of it. And then when someone comes to make you aware of it without being self-aware that you have that habit already, that it applies to you, whatever new knowledge you take in is not actively applied to it. So for example, if you like to bite your nails, right? But you don't consider yourself as a nail biter because somehow you already formed the habit before you became self-aware of nail biting, and you watch a video about nail biting, you might become aware of it, but without applying that knowledge, you can't break the nail biting and you continue to nail bite, right? I would use something a little closer to home. The classical thing is, why do diets fail? Like for weight loss, or why do training programs fail? For it's the trying to get the person to reach a level of self-awareness to be able to identify if they accurately have a habit to break, and then developing a program that resonates with the self-awareness that encourages the person to actively apply that knowledge to break the habit. And this can be seen with games. Your desire for games, your emotion for games. I mean, we're just using games and diets and like other contexts to explain the habit formation. Why am I running around in a circle trying to get a Steam achievement without feeling like I'm wasting my time? Because I'm aware of what I'm doing. I'm deliberately doing this. The difference between someone who feels like they're wasting their time and someone who's not wasting their time is how intentionally they're doing it. So when you say you're wasting your time, you're doing something that was unintended, is the most likely case. It may not always be the case, but it's most likely the case. So like, you failed more than you intended. You wasted your time. Well, if I knew that I was gonna have an undetermined amount of time invested in the activity, I can't ever feel I wasted my time because I am not arrogant enough to understand my perception of I have an accurate expectation, and that accurate expectation prevents me from feeling like I wasted my time. So how often you say you wasted your time is a construct of your own self. However, if you're happy with it and it's sustainable, you don't really have to change that mentality. You don't have to break that habit. A habit becomes an addiction or a chronic problem when it's no longer sustainable and it's destroying your daily activities. So for me, is doing this going to destroy my daily activities? It's not. So I intentionally engage in something I'm willing to sacrifice, plus or minus whatever. So when someone yesterday I met Smoke, right? Yesterday when I was doing Yakuza 3's final run on Legend through the MSQ, right? They mentioned that they can't see themselves doing what I'm doing, where I'm just playing all the Yakuza games in order for the completion tasks. And I fully believe that. But I don't think they're incapable of it. But it does require a specific type of mindset. In my mindset, I could be doing this, And then I could be doing a million things while doing this. Like what I'm doing now. Like voicing my things that I'm talking about, practicing my inevitable summation of Yakuza 4 Remastered and where it belongs in the current modern standards in gaming. I'm taking this time to do it. So every time I'm filling a void, I'm making use of that time while doing all this over again. Okay, so we got new outfits. See, I'm farming these outfits while I'm doing this. It's what I'm doing. And then I'm learning more about what I can use for this information. Okay, so we unlocked... oh wait, we unlocked 2 dresses? Let's look at what this dress looks like. Oh no, these are different color variances, right? Yeah, these are colored. So we unlocked new color. That's weird. This set, you can have access to the flashy suit, but the new colors are unlocked in a second wave. That's weird. We only need to get 1 color of each set. So let's do yellow. Yellow's kind of nice. Ooh, kind of cute. Cute dress. We need to find 23 of these. So as I'm like just spouting and ranting, if any of this is interesting, I'm practicing. If you guys are not interested, or like if someone out there watches this video in posterity and absolutely disagree with me, that's fair too. In fact, if someone disagrees with me and you know this goes on, this goes in a video, someone comments disagree with me, it provides even more things. So my goal here is to rant, express, practice my I guess charisma or what have you. Right now, because I can, I'm maximizing the time that I'm using, and I planned to do this. Before I started to stream today, I planned to do this. I mean, actually, it's kind of a cheap excuse, or like cheap reasoning, because every time I get on stream, I do plan on talking about something. And one of the things is this. So, it might sound like it's improvisational, but it really isn't. I rarely ever engage in something without a plan. And that plan is dynamic enough that it can accommodate. I mean, you need a starting point, but I have enough material in my mind that I could spin on the spot. So this is with practice. And I still trip, you know, my ideas are kind of branching everywhere, and now I'm ranting about ranting and intentful participation. However, it doesn't get better if I don't practice. And you can always plan a lot and, you know, learn and have a lot of knowledge and prepare a lot, but without execution, the practice of execution, I would be much, much worse than this. So to get to this point where I'm doing this cycling and filling in the B-roll about some complex topic, or maybe some people find it very, well, duh, it's very intuitive kind of topic. To do this, I actively participate in doing this. So whether someone disagrees or not, and etc., I'm fishing for that. And that's what I do. So anyways, active participation. And this takes a really long time. I'm telling you, I am losing, I guess I'm losing a couple. I'm not being as efficient. Basically, you take one loop around and then you go in, right? And then you get a chance. And I'm not actively tackling all the dresses at the moment because I think there's still more. So it doesn't really matter when I buy the dresses. So this was going to take I was thinking maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours, but yeah, it hasn't even been 2 hours yet. So we're just looping, having a little discussion. The one thing I can note about this is it's kind of soothing to be able to do this type of loop while trying to sort out thoughts in my head. I don't know if you guys participate in this at all, but it's usually called a fidget. My fidget is I need to do something with my hands while I'm thinking. So a lot of times I to give you an example, this is one of those examples where when someone says like, oh man, like these things are like, for example, if you play an MMO, right? And people are like, oh man, this dungeon is hard and all that stuff. To demonstrate my level of grind, I played Neverwinter online like for over 8,000 hours. I think I'm at 8,000 plus hours now, right? And what I do is I read and listen and watch something else while I'm doing the dungeons in Neverwinter. Like, you can get to a point where you're optimizing your stimuli, like how you're processing the different things, and you're just getting checkpoints, right? Like I'm doing checkpoints right now with my eyes, but I am not thinking about what I'm doing on screen right here. I'm thinking about the conversation I'm having and what I'm reading from Worm while doing this, with minimal deviation from doing the cycle that I'm doing. And this cycle that I'm doing here can be very complex with a lot of practice. You can do the cycle to the point where you don't even remember doing it. So right now, I'm taking in the dress and whatnot, but yeah, we didn't get this one either. A sexy dress, huh? It's okay. I'm doing this cycle, but later I might forget what I did in this whole cycle because I'm more focused. I'm juggling my attention. So this is what I do. This is how I maximize, quote unquote, what people would consider multitasking, right? But it's really switching attention. So every time I'm switching attention, I'm actually not paying attention to something. It's just another part of my body is doing the action without me paying attention to it. So right now, technically, I'm not paying attention to the details that are happening in my screen over here. In fact, I'm just talking and trying to form an idea with what Worm said. So right now, I read Worm's message, but I'm forming an idea to reply to Worm while continuing to have a conversation or line of thought that I'm having right now. So I'm using that time that I'm filling in with the discussion that I'm having with myself in order to form an idea and an answer to Worm's comment while maintaining this walking loop. And all that is just snapping back and forth, right? The brain doesn't do all these things simultaneously. At least for most normies like myself, they're not happening simultaneously. They're going back and forth. So, give me a sec. So this is where I have to actively look at my screen to see short halter top. Oh, wow. That's interesting. The little, like, straps. Wow, that's... I don't know how I feel about that. That kind of looks, like, kinky, doesn't it? That kind of looks weird. It almost looked like they're like, spikes or something. That's kind of weird looking dress. I heard the term stim a lot, but haven't heard fidget much. Stim. This looks really weird. This dress looks really weird. The achievement didn't pop yet, so I obviously do not have 23 outfits. So we're gonna continue going around. Stim, huh? Like stimulation? Stim as in short for stimulation, Worm? Yeah, you require a bunch of stimulation. Like for me, my goal is to constantly be at max stimulation, because if I don't continue to occupy all my faculties, I get manic. Yes, and that's a loose phrase for 100%. I'm getting all the Steam achievements, and most of that involves 100%ing the worst parts, the quote-unquote undesirable parts of the game, like the completion parts of the game. So there are most of them involve doing that. However, it's not 100% as in everything in the game, because there are some that are like 95% or 96% or 97%, depending on what the Steam achievement has. For this game, for Yakuza 4 Remastered, I look at the Steam achievement requirements like a lot of times before as I'm playing the game. It looks like it's about, I would say like 90%, 90 to 95%. Like for example, a characteristic in this game are coin locker keys. You have to collect all the keys, but not true for all the Steam achievements. You don't have to collect all the keys. So that is technically not 100%ing the game itself, but it is completing. So I'm doing it for completion. I'm doing a Steam completion, which is what I do most of the time. I could go out of my way and spend like an hour to collect all the keys and whatnot, but whoops, I just went through 2 cycles of this. But yeah. So the answer is yes, I am, and no, I'm not. So to help you to strictly clarify, it's 100% Steam completion. So I'm using the profile to, and that's kind of putting a limit. It's putting an upper limit for me, because this could get out of control. Like, and you have to set your limits, right? Limits of where you feel completion is, and that my qualification is I'm doing everything for the Steam achievements. Now here's the deal. The trade-off is true too. There is things you have to do in the game that is not part of the Steam achievements, and vice versa. So like in Yakuza 3, you had to do something for a Steam achievement that isn't a completion task in the game. So the opposite is true too. And generally speaking, overall, in my to maximize my experience, I like to build my Steam profile. So I use Steam achievements, and a lot of times there are games that I play where the game is not programmed as a completion object. The Steam achievements are a way many clever indie developers, certain notable indie developers, get the player to do something or an achievement that isn't programmed into the game. So like beating a boss in a certain way is technically not 100%ing a game. It's doing it for a Steam achievement, if you know what I mean. So there's pros and cons to my approach. And over the years, since I play a lot of indie games, Steam achievements are a place where the developers can be really creative. Like the one that I can think of is collecting garbage in a game. Like when you have a game mechanic where the garbage is meant to just be an inconvenience, a Steam achievement would be play the game when your inventory is filled with garbage or something like that. So over time, I have become more attached to Steam achievements. In this game though, this is more of a mainstream game. The stuff is the same, and the thing I'm collecting is the Platinum Achievement Award to demonstrate that I have observed the game enough, personally, for myself. Okay, I don't see anything new. Did I buy you? Yeah, I bought one of you. Thank goodness I don't have to buy all of these. Holy heck. Okay, we didn't... Oh, this is kind of cute. I like the... Like the belt thing is a little bit refined, and it kind of looks like a nice... Oh, this is a nice color. Let's buy this one. I'm basically just waiting for the Steam achievement to pop up. I don't know, I like this dress, especially when it was dark red when you hovered over it. Oh, you mean that other one? Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. I do like... It was a darker red, right? Like a rosy... I like this belt one. It's kind of nice, simple, but it has like an accent piece. We still didn't get all the dress, by the way. That was not the 23rd dress. But you can enjoy it. And also, I'm recording this for myself too. Like one day I'm just gonna look back on this. I'm like, okay. So even if I miss something, right? Say I talked about how I'm going through a loop cycle with my hands and I'm not like really looking at the screen right now because I'm going through the cycle. Someone might notice something. I might notice something upon rewatch. And so the whole idea of me recording is that I'm streaming to record for posterity and streaming for exposure. And that exposure is maybe something I said upset someone, right? That's what I'm looking for. Maybe something I said made someone digress into something. That's what I'm looking for. I'm fishing for that. Maybe someone noticed I made an error. What if I said something wrong? That's what I'm looking for. It's something to talk about. It's something to stimulate my mind about. I'm not here to be right or read off a thesaurus or read off a dictionary in which everyone else can read that. I'm looking for something that grabs someone's attention. So like, for example, if I upset someone by a very specific phrase, my first inclination is to ask them why it upsets them. And then they can tell me their story, right? The stuff. That's what I'm fishing for. So in all this setup and whatnot, I'm ranting and promoting a curiosity that I like that other people would be encouraged to do as well. So when you start playing a game and you're trying to provide commentary, the ones that grab me, the people that grab me, are their ability to constantly make observations every moment that they are on stream. And what I'm talking about is, I'm not talking about play-by-play react videos. I'm talking about something that goes beyond reacting. I mean, it's still reacting in a sense, but what I mean is on both a emotional and intellectual level. So having a conversation with yourself, having an intellectual response to your initial emotional response. Like, for example, if you get jump scared, you just continue getting jump scared or something. That's an intuitive way of experiencing a horror game, I imagine, right? Or when you get jump scared once, you start talking about it and you start rationalizing or talking about what creates a jump scare. What is the element of the jump scare that scares you in the first place? And then you focus on that, and then when you get the next jump scare, you can confirm like, yeah, it's definitely the sudden change in sound frequency, or etc. So you're actively participating and not just going along with the ride. And that's kind of where I feel the future quality of life habits that can really help people who like video games or who's into streaming and whatnot, or sharing their experiences. They can maximize their experiences and learn and have other people help you with it indirectly. When I mean indirectly is what you guys are doing now. Basically, I can do it myself, but the more the merrier. If someone's angry with me, I welcome that, because it's something that I can work on, or it's something I can discuss about. So everything is welcome, and that removes the burden for having to perform or behave a certain way or something like that. But it encourages welcoming and trying those new things. I swear I get jump scared more IRL in PvP games. I'm in anticipatory. Okay, so you hit a deep cut here. I don't play a lot of PvP games because it plays to my intuition, or I mean my lack of intuition. It plays to my profiling, my ability to want to read in people's behavior. So I become manic when I play PvP games, so much so that I'm often looking at something and then suddenly something happens and I get jump scared. So things like, oh my gosh, I know there's a guy around the corner. You look, not there. You look, you peek again, not there. And then someone shoots you in the back. Like, you get so honed in, it's like, oh no, it's 1v1, right? And then you get third party, and I'm like, and I get like a little anxiety from the third partying. That's kind of, it's playing on your expectations. But I was actually describing a very real thing where if you're actively focused on something, when you're intently focused on a task, it makes you susceptible to, you know, outside your peripheral sensory input, right? But those are the moments that are great. Those are the moments that is pure investment. And that's when you get emotional. You thought this was Sims 3? It might as well be Sims 3. Right now I'm looping. I'm looping for dresses. I'm farming for dresses, guys. It might as well be Sims, because I'm actually farming for dresses, which involves me just doing the same loop over and over again. Is this new? This is new, right? This kind of looks new. Yes. New dress. I like this. Off green. Sage. So basically, just offers and co. What I'm doing right now is I'm ranting and digressing on something, but I'm grinding something right here. Basically, I can't let this girl become #1 yet, because there's a Steam achievement that requires me to get every outfit in this game. But if you advance too quickly, you lose the ability to get outfits. So what we did was we stripped her down, not that strip, like accessories and stuff. And then we have to keep rotating and pass on. Son, calm down. We have to keep rotating and passing until all the dresses are unlocked. So while we're doing that, we're just discussing random things or things that are relevant to this. So we're B-rolling for dress. And until I get the Steam achievement that says I got all the dresses, we're just gonna keep rotating and keep passing. That's basically what we're doing. Apparently you can miss this by doing it too quickly, and I was like 14 dresses off. Like, we're still, I don't even know, I think that was maybe dress. We still haven't hit 23 dresses, but let's keep going. So we have to buy one of each dress type, and they only get unlocked every 3 sessions, and every 3 sessions require 3 rotations around the thing. So ooh, I kind of like this. Ooh, that blue one's kind of nice. Oh, I like those too, the circles. This kind of reminds me of matcha. Like, it's a matcha boba tea, you know? I like this. It's like a matcha boba tea dress. I didn't get the achievement unlocked, so we're still missing a dress. Yeah, matcha. Offers doesn't like matcha, guys. Just saying. It's okay, it's an acquired taste. We know that Coffers is like a 13-year-old, so it's fine. He likes chocolate and like cookies and cream flavor stuff. Matcha is nasty. Yeah, it's a acquired taste. What the heck? Oh yeah, this is, she's doing like all stuff. So this stuff, I never see this stuff. Like that stuff, like where she gets stressed and then she like hassles the thing. That was probably in Yakuza 3, but it never happened because there is an achievement that requires me to like stall, right? So we're seeing a lot of like animations that I don't typically see, and that's what I mean by Steam achievements. Like in the game, I don't think it has a... What does matcha taste like? Green tea. It tastes like dirt. It makes things a little dirty. Like coffee grounds and stuff. Yeah, it tastes like dirt. It's supposed to, it's a floral thing. So it makes it very earthy, like nutty and earthy. An example of earthiness would be like that people might like, that isn't an acquired taste. Unsalted walnuts. Unsalted walnuts. Have you ever eaten unsalted walnuts? How bland it is? Like, it just, you know, it's supposed to be very earthy and nutty, as in it's supposed to complement. So what I'm saying is matcha unflavored, like matcha without anything else, it's supposed to add the like that earthy smell and stuff to contrast with something. So in boba tea you typically have sugar in it, like a bit of sugar, maybe even brown sugar, right? And then the boba has a flavor and stuff. The matcha is supposed to complement that. It's supposed to heighten and add another dimension to the taste. It's kind of like a cappuccino. You could just drink straight black coffee if you want, which I'm okay with drinking straight matcha tea. You know, no sugar, nothing. But in boba, it makes the beverage sweeter. It accents the stuff. So it's kind of like contrasting palates. When you have salted malt ice cream, right? The ice cream is sweet, but the texture on top from the salt actually makes the ice cream even sweeter. So the idea is matcha is often added into boba because it complements the other stuff. So it's kind of like also acid and sugar, or fattiness, sorry, fatty things. So if you add lemon or citrus like lime to something fatty like pork belly or something, pork belly is not a great example, but something that's really fatty, and you put lemon on it, it cuts and complements things. So green tea is more like for the smell that you get when you drink it. It kind of just, it's a dirt property. That's all I can describe it. It's a dirt quality. It downplays the potential sugariness of boba. So in fact, it's to a point, like what I mean is it's to help you handle the sugariness, but what it can do also when you do these things is you can consume less sugar. So if you're someone who's very sensitive to a lot of sugar, like be it how you feel afterwards or your current palate, adding earthiness things like green tea or matcha specifically. Matcha is a specific type of green tea that is largely from Japan, that's popularized in Japan, like the actual, so it's a type of green tea. It helps with people with sensitive palates, and that's why Sun and I always talk about matcha a lot, because if you have really classically maybe some aversion to like sugary beverages or whatnot, you can downplay the sugar by adding something earthy. And it's kind of like how I do this stuff, like this stuff is really sweet, so I typically take a sip of this and then drink some water, so I get the sugariness, really pungent, like strong sugariness, but the water is what's sensitizing me to the sugar. So I like to drink water before I sip something sugary, because it ultimately creates a habit of me being more sensitive to sugar, and I would end up ultimately consuming less sugar, and it might not upset me as much and whatnot. So that's kind of how it works. It's playing on human physiology, basically. Give me all that sugar in MSG. I do like my MSG. But here's the thing, if you don't have MSG for a while and then have some MSG, it's even more off the walls. But anyways, yeah, I do like my umami. I usually use the word umami instead because it's euphemism. MSG has a negative stigma that has been categorically misunderstood. So I tend to use the word umami instead. And you know, we're playing a Japanese game and we're all otakus, right? Umami is the sense, the taste sense that we're talking about with glutamates. We own this, right? Yeah, we own this. I remember the sexy dress. Mermaid dress. 2-piece. Yeah, we bought a 2-piece. Short halter top. Long. They're not in order, which doesn't help. Like, ooh, this one looks, ugh. Sorry, that print. Oof. Okay, I'm going with something like this. This one's good. I like this dress. It's very modest. It has like a... I like it. I like the trim. The complimentary trim on the dress really gives it a lot of form. She's not very happy because all her outfits suck because there's no accessories and she's really stressed and all that stuff. I'm keeping her down just to... I'm sandbagging. That's still not dress 23, by the way, guys. So we still gotta go look for more dress. If you want to know, I prepared 4 hours of things to say for this, expecting that this will take 2 hours. But we've already crossed 2 hours and 15 minutes doing this. Yeah, we're D-ranking. We have to keep her from number 1. I don't want to train another hostess. So we picked the first hostess we encountered because that's just fate. Her name is Kyoko. Oh, let me tell you a little bit about Kyoko. Oh no, she's getting... Well, she's she's very stressed. She just slapped another hostess. Okay, alright, well, she's a little bit tired, guys. I didn't teach her to relax and all that stuff, so, wow. So you can get super service, and you can get super disservice, I suppose. Oh yeah, she is not having it now. Yeah, I haven't seen any of these scenes in Yakuza 3, because it didn't require us to stall. But anyways, Kyoko is Bachi, by the way. That's the easiest way to explain it. If you're a weeb, you would know exactly what I mean. But we bumped into Kyoko at Bantam at a bar, and she has a band, right? And the band is suffering. Like, basically they're not really they're trying to make money to support the band, so all of them have part-time jobs, but she doesn't have a part-time job. So I picked her up. Akiyama just swooped her up and say, hey, why don't you become a hostess? And then that's where she is now. And we get to see the end of her story if I let her become number 1, which we aren't letting her become number 1 because we need to farm those dresses. But we'll end up seeing her end of her story at some point. Oh, she didn't come in. We're deliberately trying to end her session early too. If she somehow ends it, I don't think you can. Oh no, that's the second time she's not in. Wait, is she permanently not in? Can I actually lose her? I don't actually know if I can lose a hostess. Wait. Oh no. You know, I don't even know if you can actually lose. This is the first time she didn't come in 3 times. Okay. We're still fine. It's fine. It's all good. It's all good. She's still coming in. She just needs to hold on for a little bit longer. She'll become number 1. I promise. She'll become number 1 with a new outfit, you know? The game put in so many outfits. Holy heck. Honestly, let me take a look. Completion list. Hostess Maker. Yeah, so you have 3 hostess, right? And then you just have to increase them to the max. But the thing is, it doesn't tell you to collect anything. When all the dresses are bought, yeah. So this is what I mean by the Steam achievement thing versus 100%ing the game. The Steam achievement requires me to get all the dresses, but it's not a requirement in the game. Like, there's no checklist for buying all the dresses. Usually they're kind of synchronized, but these are the older games. The older games have retroactive Steam achievements added. They're desynchronized. But Kiwami 1, Kiwami 2, Yakuza 0, anything post Yakuza 0, the Steam achievements reflect largely 100% of the completion. So Yakuza 0, Kiwami 1 and 2 were 100%. Like in-game and the Steam achievement. Yakuza 3 required about 70% of the total things that were listed in the game. But the biggest but is that it is 98% of the things you had to do that were rigorous. So like one of the achievements is to master all the minigames. So that is like the bulk of the time. So our game runtime basically met with 100 hours plus. It was about 110 hours, which is where Yakuza 3 typically, for like a leisure person, whoops, I've been cycling too much, clocked in at. Kiwami 1 is one of the shorter ones. It clocked in at 85. Kiwami 2 is a bit shorter because it's even more modern. It clocked in at around 78. Yakuza 0 is arguably the longest, and it clocked in at 150-ish. Yakuza 4, which is what we're working on now, because of the Steam achievements, I think it's going to clock in lower than the norm. Oh hey, she succeeded without... Wow, she actually... That was a super service. It's probably going to clock in at like 120 hours. And then Yakuza 5 is the second longest of all the titles, which is anywhere from 130 to 150. But I think it might be shorter because the Steam achievements don't really line up with the game's completion. And then the rest is new. Yakuza, Like a Dragon 6. I'm gonna condition myself out of calling it Yakuza soon, because we're gonna have to get used to saying Like a Dragon, because that is officially that title, which is a funny trivia that I mentioned before. The reason why they are now officially switching over to Like a Dragon is because the last game, the last mainline game that was released, is called Yakuza Like a Dragon, and it marks the first game that is both a Yakuza game and Like a Dragon. And I believe that's such a nice legacy to acknowledge the differences. And what is the big difference? Yakuza Like a Dragon is the first time both the localization, the dubbing is international. So it is the first mainline game in the series to feature American, like English, typically American voice actors and Japanese voice actors in the original release. So the game was released internationally, with the expectation that it has a Western audience and an Eastern audience. So from now on, after Yakuza Like a Dragon, which is Like a Dragon 6 or Yakuza 6, they have dropped the Yakuza name and assume its original name, which is Like a Dragon, because there's no longer a difference between them. It is the international release, and that marks a great thing. It means RGG has finally reached international status, and that's fantastic. It really means officially that Sega, the publishing group, the one that owns the IP, has an in-house studio that makes Like a Dragon, and it has reached an appeal that it's lucratively and safe enough to release on an international level. And I absolutely love that, because let's just say there are still certain Japanese studios and publishers out there that is gonna make me really, really sad, but also it's fine too, because I kind of like feeling sad every once in a while, and FOMO and stuff. This year there's gonna be a title that's released that I have been very loyal and nostalgic about this particular publisher, and they're releasing a game and I have to wait 1 year at least or more before I can play it on my preferred platform. I'll let you guess who that is. I'll give you a hint. It's not From Software. What the heck? Where are my new dresses, yo? Wait, did I miss a dress? Okay, let's count them. Let's count them. No, it's not From Software. Mazuku, it's not From Soft. I just gave you that hint. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20. 20? We're missing 3? Holy heck. Final Fantasy 16, yes. Freaking Square Enix. Freaking Square. If there is any developer / publisher that I played more than Sega, is Square. And I'm not even saying the NX part, it's Squaresoft. Squaresoft has my life's legacy. If I had to do like a content creator spiel, the developer / publisher that made me who I am now, that made my legacy, is Squaresoft and Sega. And ironically, or like not ironically, coincidentally, I've been playing Yakuza, which this is the most Sega I've ever played since Squaresoft took most of my legacy in video gaming. And yeah, they still doing that. You were gonna guess System Shock. Oh yeah, that's true. System Shock is coming out soon. Unfortunately, I missed the System Shock days because I was Blizzard. I was a Blizzard boy during the System Shock times. I was still Blizzard boy. So the Blizzard is number 3, but I've fallen out of Blizzard. Like technically, I'm still a Blizzard boy. Warcraft and Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, World of Warcraft, StarCraft, StarCraft 1, StarCraft 2, Diablo 1, 2. And then I stopped at 3, which I just played the demo, and that's it. Because then during that time, Overwatch and Hearthstone, and I still play Hearthstone now. So I've been a Blizzard boy as well. So those are the trifecta: Square, Blizzard, and Sega. They are the most overlapping. And by that, what I mean is I have the largest catalog. Like, it doesn't mean it takes the most influence. Like, it influenced me the most. I just have, they're the biggest publishers. so they have the highest frequency of overlap. I've played the most number of games published by them. But influences come from indie games most of the time. I mean, that's generally the go. Like, I liked Squaresoft when they were still, quote unquote, cue the memes, right? A small indie company, right? And Blizzard when it was still a small indie company when they were starting up. And then now they're mainstream. So I still place 1 or 2 titles by them that are mainstream. But usually most of my influences come from indie developers. And they don't have the luxury of multiple groups, releasing games frequently, and then this day and age, it's difficult to release games consistently, frequently, without risks, especially being an indie company who's still trying to discover what is it that's going to make them mainstream. The closest guys I have is now officially mainstream, which I just mentioned a few minutes ago, Supergiant Games. They are officially breaking into mainstream, and that means I will probably fade away interest from them, because as much as I like to play Hades 2, it's ultimately less interesting to me than them announcing a new IP. And yes, it's a selfish request, because as I have gone through before, releasing a new IP is risky. That's why indie is so passionate, because they risk it all on the line because they have to create new IPs, right? Or stick with their original IP. Hence, Don't Starve, Stardew Valley, Terraria. It's difficult to take that business risk to release a new IP. And that's why I really appreciate, I defend developers all the time, even for mainstream developers, which is misplaced. It's a misplaced sentimentalism. I still defend mainstream publishers and stuff, but they know what they're doing with their iterative designs, so I don't need to defend that at all. However, I've grown habit of defending from the developer standpoint, because indie people get ripped apart and reamed if they ever suggest they have like a mainstream formula or they're high budget, even though they have to take the risk because they need to establish an identity, an IP, before going mainstream. So when an indie developer, like for example, looks like a mainstream developer, they get reamed for putting everything they have in it. They don't get a pass for having limited resources, overcoming stuff. If any of the things they happen to overlap with a mainstream developer, they are held to the same standards without any, like, it's a double standard basically, because it doesn't apply to them. And that's why I find myself on a defensive end most of the time, just to promote awareness that you don't become FromSoft overnight. And then when you just happen to like something and get inspired off something that's mainstream, unfortunately, it's ultimately the developer's decision to know that they're going to draw comparisons, right? So it's the risk they take, but they are taking a risk, or trying to bring entertainment to someone. It's different when there's money in it, in my opinion. Like it works both. It works unconditionally. So when people say, oh, money is very important to the perception of a game's quality, fine, but it also works in the other way too, where money becomes a gatekeeper for that too. Much like emotions, if you love something of the same thing, it's not a double standard where when you get the same thing but it's not by the person you love specifically and somehow it becomes cheapened, that, well, then that's a double standard. So a lot of times emotions and interpret of business matters and stuff can be a double standard. Like any game that's a Souls-like is going to get reamed apart by having to draw comparisons with FromSoft when they, oh no, the slap, silent slap. So I don't particularly like double standards, and I don't believe that anyone should be held to a double standard, or try not to. And it's the same for that other person. So like it's all around unconditional. Keeping aware of double standards can help, ultimately even help yourself, right? Because you might make double standards for yourself and it could be killing your quality of life. And you apply double standards to others because of not, often it's an empathy thing where you have not been held to a double standard. So therefore it's difficult to see that you're holding other things to a double standard. And that's reasonable. My take on it is having people point out their own double standards and how they're holding others to double standards, raise their awareness enough that it might actually be something they can use to improve their own life. Because what's a really classical way to double standard yourself to the point where you are miserable? Because, and then you apply that to everything else. What's a classic double standard? I don't have the genetics to run that fast, so I'm not going to. That's a double standard. So you're gonna choose never to run just because you can't run as fast as someone who can run really fast because it's implied that they were naturally born to run really fast. That's kind of the idea. So whenever you think about it, I'm not saying you can't have double standards and you can not feel bad about things that are double standards or feel good about things that are double standard. Is the idea that if you practice doing that a lot, you're going to inherently do it to yourself. And if I can see that that is one of the reasons why you are suffering, it'd be worth it, in my opinion, to try to get the person to understand that doing the double standarding less may make you feel compulsive to do it less to yourself. Because a lot of things you repeat ultimately also repeats with yourself because you're reminded with it. And double standards are a big one. It's a really big one. And a lot of times it's always outward stuff that people focus on or get, you know, told like, don't do that, that's not nice, kind of thing. But inherently you can motivate the person to see the damage it can do by pointing it out in their own lives. Like, I can't enjoy this because someone else, like, I like this, but someone else doesn't, so that's not fair. That's a double standard. I love this game, but someone else don't. That's not right. That's a double standard. Right? So you're applying different standards to that person than yourself. Like, or someone says, everyone's unique, but you're wrong. That's a double standard. If everyone's unique, then everyone, like, has a different take. So not anyone can be particularly wrong. Unless you're saying everyone else is wrong, and including yourself, right? It's a different standard. So the more you apply these things, you can be perfectly healthy. Being a principled person like Kiryu, for example, is a really principled person. He knows right from wrong. He will always promote what is the right thing to do and what is the wrong thing to do. But he's also happy. Sort of. It's kind of hard to know if Kiryu is happy. But he suffers a lot too. So the idea is, if you think it applies to you and raising awareness of it, it can make you a very happy person or a much happier person. I used to be the guy that applies a lot of double standards. But I realized those double standards stopped me from doing things that, like, it was irrational. I mean, double standards are irrational most of the time. So, for example, touching grass is a great example. I'm sorry guys. I know. I said it, touching grass. Or like running, like doing cardio. Or something like I don't have to watch what I eat because I'm skinny, you know, things like that. Or like I feel like I'm fit and I'm not in danger, so I don't have to worry about these things. Well, you know, you could always just do it because you want, like, it'll be something that you can do in the future, right? So a lot of times to get to that can-do attitude, you know, the I can do it if I wanted to kind of thing, on paper, you can get to it even without the motivation to do so.